The Bushmaster isn't just another military truck. It's the Australian vehicle that went from a local prototype to a global frontline icon. In Afghanistan, troops swore it saved their lives. In Africa, peacekeepers trusted it on missions where a flat tire could mean death. And today, it's performing masterfully on the battlefield in Ukraine.
They were a great asset to us in liberating the areas around Kharkiv. Slava Ukraini! Героям слава!
Designed in Australia, built in Australia, and proven in some of the deadliest environments on Earth. So how did a homegrown, unassuming looking machine become one of the most respected and fearsome military vehicles in modern warfare? I'm Pikos, and today we're talking tactics. The Aussie vehicle changing modern warfare. To understand why the Bushmaster exists, you have to look back at what the Australian Defence Force faced in the late Cold War and early 1990s. At that time, the ADF was still relying heavily on unarmoured vehicles for troop movement across long distances. Great for mobility, terrible for protection. Defence planners knew that if Australia was going to operate in harsh environments like Northern Australia, the Pacific, or potential peacekeeping missions, they needed something tougher. Something that could keep soldiers alive from the moment they stepped inside. Not a heavy fighting vehicle, not a tank substitute, but a protected mobility vehicle. In the early 1990s, the Army launched Project Bushranger, a competition to find a vehicle to fit this emerging role. Several international companies put forward designs, but what stood out was the local partnership between Irish firm Timony and Australian company Perry Engineering. They designed a V-shaped hull which would deflect explosions away from the cabin and gave the Bushmaster something that would become its signature strength: blast protection. As the project evolved, the design transferred to Australian Defence Industries, which would later become Thales Australia. This local development was important. It meant Australian engineers could tailor the vehicle to Australian needs rather than trying to retrofit an overseas design that was never meant for our environment. The result was a vehicle built from the ground up to survive heat, rough roads, long distances, and explosive threats. But the Bushmaster's journey was not smooth. Project Bushranger ran into delays, redesigns, budget debates, and political pushback. Some critics argued it was over-engineered or too expensive. Others thought the Army should just buy something off the shelf, and for a while, it looked like the project might collapse entirely. Then came the early deployments of Australian forces to East Timor. That mission exposed exactly why the Bushmaster was needed. Troops still relied on unarmoured trucks, which were vulnerable even in low-intensity environments. Mobility was limited, protection was minimal, and fatigue was high. By the time the mission finished, the argument for a protected mobility vehicle was undeniable. Production finally began, and the Bushmaster rolled into service in the early 2000s. Within a few years, Australia would deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan, where improvised explosive devices and roadside bombs became the most lethal threats. Apparently, Aussie soldiers weren't initially impressed with the Bushmaster and thought it looked like a pregnant Humvee and was too large of a target. But after riding them and comparing them to the ASLAVs they were used to, they were a dream, with individual seating, a comparatively spacious interior, and excellent air conditioning. They became their chariot of choice and immediately proved its worth, saving lives again and again. Soldiers began calling it the Bushie, and it earned a reputation overseas as one of the safest vehicles of its class. Today, the Bushmaster is not just a piece of equipment, it is a symbol of Australian engineering, resilience, and problem solving. It started as a niche requirement and ended up becoming one of Australia's most successful defence vehicles, shaping the protected mobility category before the rest of the world caught up. The Bushie's specs. The Bushmaster looks tough, but its real strength is in the engineering. It's a big vehicle, just over 7 meters long, 2.5 meters wide, and 2.7 meters tall. It weighs around 11.5 tons empty and can go up to 15 tons fully loaded. Inside, it carries a driver plus up to 9 troops depending on the variant. There's more than 11 cubic meters of protected internal space, plus another 2.5 cubic meters for external stowage. It includes a 200-litre water storage tank under the floorboards utilised by passengers, but also adds an extra layer of protection against IEDs. And with a 300-litre fuel tank, it has a range of up to 800 kilometres. It's actually very common for the external fuel tank to be blown off by an IED, but the Bushie includes a small internal fuel tank that allows the crew to keep driving for some distance afterwards, so as to be able to retreat from danger without stopping. Under the hood, it runs a Caterpillar 3126E, a 7.2 litre turbo diesel pumping out around 300 horsepower. It has a top speed of about 100 kilometers per hour, which isn't that fast, but fast enough. It's not built for racing. It's built to survive ambushes, mines, and brutal terrain. Each tyre weighs a whopping 224 kilograms and has internal hard rubber run flat tyres. The driver can also adjust the tyre pressure to suit different road surfaces at the touch of a button. The protection is where the Bushie earns its reputation. It boasts a V-shaped armoured hull which pushes blast energy away from the crew. The armour can be scaled up to meet higher ballistic standards. And the windows are made of extremely thick armoured polycarbonate which can withstand up to a 50 caliber round. Armament depends on the variant. Most Bushmasters mount a remote weapon station or an open ring mount capable of carrying a 12.7mm heavy machine gun or a 40mm automatic grenade launcher. You can also fit 7.62mm machine guns on swing mounts, and some mission kits allow for anti-armor weapons or mortar systems to be carried inside. In Afghanistan, they were fitted with protective weapons stations mounting 7.62mm machine guns, so the crew commander could operate the gun from the safety of inside the vehicle. A screen was attached to a high-powered zoom camera, complete with thermal optics, allowing them to see and engage targets from a great distance by day or by night. They would also be fitted with an electronic countermeasure system to disrupt the remote signals sent to IEDs. Some vehicles would also mount a mine roller system to the front of the vehicle to detonate pressure-operated IEDs before the vehicle could hit it. And if you need it to move quickly, the whole vehicle is small enough and light enough to fit inside a C-130 Hercules. But one of the Bushmasters' biggest strengths isn't just what it is, it's how many different variants exist. Talos offers more than a dozen variants, including the troop carrier, command, ambulance, mortar carrier, direct fire, air defense, and others. This modular approach is why the Bushmaster works for so many missions and why so many countries keep buying it. Deployed around the world. The Bushmaster earned his reputation the hard way. Not in trials or theory, but on real battlefields and real missions around the world. In Afghanistan, it became legendary. Australian troops used it for patrols, resupply, and convoy security across provinces like Uruzgan and Kandahar. Dozens of Bushmasters were hit by IEDs and blasts that destroyed other vehicles, yet crews repeatedly walked away. Many soldiers openly credit the Bushmaster with keeping them alive. In Iraq, it operated with Australian and coalition forces, moving through some of the most dangerous routes around Baghdad and Al-Muthana. It was used for troop transport, mentoring missions, and long convoy escorts where ambushes and roadside bombs were constant threats. In Mali, the Dutch army relied on Bushmasters for United Nations operations. The harsh desert conditions, extreme heat, and long distances became a real proving ground. Once again, the Bushmaster delivered, earning a strong reputation for mechanical reliability and crew protection. Recently, the Bushmaster has become one of the most appreciated vehicles donated to Ukraine from any nation. They've been used for casualty evacuation, troop transport, logistics, and even as mobile command posts. Ukrainian soldiers praise how well it survives artillery fragments, mines, and rough terrain. The Bushmaster has also served in East Timor, the Solomon Islands, and Fiji, supporting peacekeeping missions and stabilization operations. These deployments were less about combat and more about presence, protection, and moving personnel safely in uncertain environments. The USA at one stage did consider acquiring these vehicles, however, instead opted to develop their own versions, which were not even close to the same level of quality that the Bushie is. But the Bushmaster isn't just a war machine. At home, it's been used in domestic emergencies, including floods, fires, and cyclone recovery. Its ability to ford water, navigate blocked roads, and carry essential supplies makes it incredibly valuable when infrastructure collapses. It has supported disaster relief, humanitarian assistance, and evacuation operations across Australia and the region. Wherever it goes, the Bushmaster brings the same thing: protection, reliability, and the ability to keep people alive in the worst conditions. When a Bushmaster rolls up, people know help is on the way. Defence export success. The Bushmaster isn't just a workhorse for the Australian Army. It's become one of Australia's most successful defence exports. Built by Thales Australia in Bendigo, over 1,200 Bushmasters have been manufactured there to date. Several countries have bought or operate the Bushmaster. The Netherlands operate over 100 Bushmasters, making them the second largest operator of the vehicles. They're used by the Dutch Army and the Royal Dutch Marines. The United Kingdom bought around 24 Bushmasters back in 2008. Their vehicles have additional armour, electronic IED defence, and a 50 cal machine gun mounted in a remote weapons station. Jamaica ordered roughly 18 vehicles in 2013 to replace their older armoured personnel carriers. Fiji has also acquired Bushmasters, both for domestic security and peacekeeping roles. The Japan Ground Self-Defense Force operate 8 Bushmasters for disaster response and expeditionary roles. Indonesia operate a number of Bushmasters, including 15 that Australia donated to the country in 2023 for peacekeeping missions. And New Zealand ordered 43 Bushmasters to replace their armoured Pinzgals. Those export deals are important. Not only do they prove that Australia can produce world-class protective vehicles, but they also help keep the Bendigo manufacturing facility running. This supports hundreds of jobs in Victoria and local small to medium businesses across the national supply chain. Perhaps most visibly, Australia has donated 120 Bushmaster protected mobility vehicles to Ukraine since 2022. These had been heavily requested by Ukraine, and after seeing combat on the battlefield, was heavily praised by President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Your government decided to provide Ukraine with Bushmasters, and we are very grateful. These equipment has performed masterfully in real combat operations.
These vehicles have been used by Ukrainian forces for troop transport, casualty evacuation, command and control, and more. Every time another country buys, operates, or deploys a Bushmaster, it sends a clear signal. Australia not only builds life-saving defence gear, but does so with excellence that earns global trust. Next Gen Bushmasters. So what comes next? Will there be a Bushmaster version 2? This next generation vehicle would likely include stronger modular armour, more advanced digital battle management systems, upgraded suspension and drivetrains for heavier loads, and improved protection against drones and precision munitions. In short, it would be designed for the threats that modern armies are facing right now, not just the ones the original Bushmaster was built for in the 1990s. We've also seen fully electric versions of the Bushmaster, as well as regional specific versions such as the MR6 variant made for the UK. This version had a larger, redesigned hull, new Caterpillar C7 engine, upgraded suspension and braking, optional drivetrain configurations, improved electronics, better storage, and an enhanced remote weapon station that can mount a 30mm cannon. Thales is also producing the Bushmaster's smaller, lighter cousin, the Hawkeye. It fills an important niche as a lighter, more agile platform for patrols and command roles, but it's not a replacement for the Bushmaster. The two vehicles occupy different ends of the protected mobility spectrum, and in practice, the Hawkeye is complementing the Bushmaster rather than phasing it out. If anything, demand for the Bushmaster has increased. The Australian Defence Force continues to rely heavily on it. Overseas interest is rising. Several countries that previously tested or leased the vehicle are now exploring permanent acquisitions. And the combat performance of Bushmasters in Ukraine has only amplified global recognition of their value. Put all of this together and the picture becomes clear. A next generation Bushmaster is no longer a hypothetical idea. It is becoming an increasingly likely reality, driven by export opportunities, evolving battlefield threats, and the need for a tougher, smarter vehicle that can carry the Bushmaster legacy into the next decades. What do you think? Is it time for the 2.0 version of the Bushmaster, or just keep updating the current model? Should we expand the production line to meet global demand, or should we be designing and building an entirely new vehicle? Let me know in the comments section down below. That's it for today. I'm Pikos, and we've been talking tactics.